everyone, welcome to Seek Up. This is the place where we get to talk about how to take your lessons of your yoga practice and really raise your vibration so that we're constantly orienting towards seeking up. I'm really happy to share with you today's guest, Joseph Armstrong. Hey, Joseph.
Hi.
Thanks for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
So for those of you guys who don't know, Joseph is a teacher with us at Miami Life Center, and you also have a course that's launching here on OmStars, and you're just a really awesome person. So I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
I would love to kind of jump right in and let people get to know sort of where you started in your yoga practice, because this is, we're all coming together in yoga, and even though it's the question that like every yogi gets asked, like, what brought you to yoga? So Joseph, what brought you to yoga?
Well, I think it's an awesome question, first of all, because no one wakes up one day feeling wonderful and is like, oh, today is the day I'm going to start practicing yoga, right? So something brings us all there. And for me, it was a long struggle with addiction. So I was in and out of various chemicals, alcohol for many years. And at the same time, I was flirting with yoga. I did this dance between the two for a long time.
So about how old were you?
I was in high school. Like the first time I drank, I got drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were in high school,
I
like
was in
16?
high school. I was 17, 18, somewhere in there. So most people know how to like moderate their drinking. Like those of us who are addicts from the get-go, like we have no sort of like moderation sense. So the first time I drank, I got drunk.
Did that open up a door? Did you then start to want to get drunk every weekend, or how quickly did you kind of get looped into all of that?
I was still in school, and even for years after that, I was moderately functional, is what I would say. Like, I still managed to hold down jobs for a period of time.
After you got out of school?
Yeah, after I got out of school, or even while I was in school. I was working then too, So I would hold down a job for a little while, but I was fired from every job that I ever had until I became a yoga teacher. Every single one.
Yeah. That's a big story.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, so it started off with alcohol, and then like let's jump into this. So walk me through this. So you had your first drink when you're around 17. You're in high school. You get drunk, and then how did it go from there?
So the first time that I got really sick from drinking, a friend and I passed back and forth a bottle of Aftershock, which is this terrible like cinnamon liquor.
I think I've heard of it, but I've never tried it.
It's really terrible.
Yeah.
And we just swigged it back and forth, back and forth.
And you're in high school?
In high school. I'm guessing at some point he stopped and I didn't. So I was supposed to work the next day, first day of a new job. And my grandmother came to pick me up, right?
Your grandmother?
My grandmother. I was raised by my grandmother.
Okay.
But
and for everyone who doesn't know, where are you from?
I'm from North Carolina.
Okay, so your grandma in North Carolina.
My grandma in North Carolina came.
Did you call her, or was it kind of scheduled that she was?
It was scheduled that she was going to pick me up.
All right.
Yeah. But like we had to stop halfway there so that I could throw up. And then I managed to get all the way there. This was at Walmart, mind you.
Okay.
I was going to work at Walmart because that's where you work in North Carolina when you're in high school.
Yeah.
And somehow I managed to go into this orientation and I made it through the whole thing. But this is just sort of like part and parcel for the rest of my life, for the next 10 or so, 15 years. So the drinking built and built and built. I started experimenting with marijuana shortly thereafter. Once I got into college, I started flirting with things like LSD, ecstasy. Once I got out of college, I started flirting with things like cocaine. And all of this had very bad effects on my life.
Yeah.
But none of it was bad enough to make me stop. Until I started flirting with crystal meth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a serious drug. And
absolutely.
Yeah. I managed to do that. Even that one, I managed to do for a couple years.
What's interesting about crystal is that it's such an upper, so that you get this feeling of invincibility, and you get this feeling of like, I can accomplish everything, you know, and it actually, for a short period of time, seems to make you more productive.
Yeah.
You know.
It does. And it also makes you more productive at like cleaning the same window for like 3 hours, right?
You're mopping the same part of your floor.
Really ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple years, and you know, I'll even get very detailed with this. With crystal meth, there's a few different ways that you can use it, right? So most when you start, it's kind of like cocaine. So it's a powdery, crystally substance that you can snort.
Yeah,
right?
that's the one that I've done when I was partying.
Yes, so there's that. The next step up from that is smoking it. So if you take the same crystalline powder, put it in a pipe of some sort, put heat under it, it turns into a smoke, and
Like a vapor.
Yes.
Okay.
And it gets into your bloodstream faster.
Okay.
Right? And so that's what sort of creates the intensity of a high, is how quickly it gets into your bloodstream and into the rest of your body. So you snort something, it has to go through mucous membranes. You inhale something, and it has to go through your lungs. But if you inject something, it goes right into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually I got to that last method of use, which is intravenous. And
were you looking for that faster and faster high?
yeah, I just always, that was just how I lived. I always wanted to be more of whatever it was. Like,
Right.
I can't even put my finger on what it was that I wanted to be more
Yeah,
of.
no, I understand. Like the intensity itself is part of the addiction.
Yeah,
The
I wanted more of it.
Yes, whatever it is, you wanted more.
Yeah. So,
Like there was almost an endless hole
Yeah.
that you could have just keep pumping more and more into just to get
Absolutely.
more experience and more intense.
yeah. So,
I had the experience that I never wanted to go to sleep.
yeah.
You know, so it's the come down. So that endless quest, you know, it has this feeling of, you know, that the high will never end.
Well, it's funny you say that because the thing with crystal is that doing the drug is one thing. And I knew people who could moderate their use to a certain degree and who could get themselves after. So you do it once and you're up for a couple days, right?
Yes.
But after those couple days, they could put themselves to bed. I was not like that. Once I went for a couple days, I wanted to go for 4 days. When I went for 4 days, I wanted to go for a week. And I'm talking about literally a week without sleep. And use at this level actually clinically, pathologically resembles paranoid schizophrenia. Because
you have this sleep deprivation.
you haven't slept, your brain's no longer working like it should. You're hearing things, you're seeing things. You're basically indistinguishable from someone with very severe mental illness.
Absolutely.
So
you can look back now and you can see yourself in those experiences.
yeah.
And you can see there. Now, was there like a pivot point? Because it sounds like, you know, the drinking, the partying with kind of like the party drugs of high school and college, even if done to extremity, are things that, you know, most people at some moment have engaged in. You know, I think everyone's gone to like a college party where they passed out or something like that. There's a qualitative difference between, say, dabbling in those drugs and sort of messing up your life in a general sense to the sort of high level, sort of, you know, endless quest for more that led you into this addiction.
Well,
what was the switch about? Like, when did that happen? What do you think it was really like the cycle of the drug itself, or was there a psychological element that drove you?
There came a point where I really intentionally wanted to burn it all down.
I understand.
Like, I really wanted to burn everything down to my whole life.
Right.
Like, I was just so. Once you get caught up into this cycle, you start living in a way that feels kind of soulless. And when you become soulless like that, you start looking for ways of escape. And the escape method is either get higher or die.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I was doing. But you mentioned the word pivot point a moment ago. I'll also say that I feel really fortunate that I did eventually get to the point where I injected, because from the moment I first injected crystal meth to the last time until I decided to get sober was almost exactly 6 months.
Wow. So very quickly.
Yeah. It took 6 months of me using crystal meth IV to really destroy everything to the point that I could start rebuilding.
So what were some of those casualties?
So a relationship that I had been in for a few years with a partner who was unbelievably, incredibly supportive of me every step of the way, who, as I packed my stuff to leave our apartment, basically stood there and begged me not to go. So that was really probably the biggest casualty of it. Beyond that, personal relationships with my family not knowing where I was for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
Legal issues, like my, when this last bit of escapade started in my life. So I was living in Washington, D.C., and with this boyfriend who I just mentioned, and I left, and I was homeless. Like, I had nowhere else to go. But I was also a druggie, so I didn't care, right? So I started basically just crashing around from place to place with friends, right? And eventually I met a new guy who was also doing drugs, and we became very close very quickly out of desperation and a need to sort of like have someone to hold on to. And through a series of events, we ended up friends with a drug dealer. In fact, we were kind of drug dealers ourselves.
Right.
Right?
That's a very common thing to have happen.
Yeah,
You don't
like,
really intend it, but then you're there and you're in the moment.
You have to. Like, you get a crystal meth addiction when
Very
you're using
expensive.
IV is very, very expensive. Like,
So did you start selling enough to sustain your habit?
oh yes, yeah. And it wasn't just that. We were also selling a drug called GHB, which is,
That's the one they call the date rape drug.
yeah, it's like alcohol to the extreme.
Instant drunk.
Yeah, instant drunk. And also insanely dangerous. Like, it's a very, very dangerous substance. And you know,
Would you do those two together, the GHB and
you do them together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the
What's the purpose of that?
So, I mean, if you want to know, if you're going to ask, in the gay community, right? So these drugs, these party drugs, are really used to create a really extreme sort of sexual energy. So when you put these two things together, like they call it the rape drug, the date rape drug, because it totally eliminates inhibitions. GHB does.
I thought it was called the date rape drug because it just passed people out.
No. You have to give a certain amount in order to completely pass people out.
Okay.
But right before that, if the dosage is correct, then the effect is actually really euphoric and dissociative, but not like...
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. I thought it was only used to pass people out.
No. So there's like a whole sort of community of drug users who are gay built around this lifestyle.
I understand. One of the things that I think that you're alluding to also is that there's a lifestyle around this which can tap into a place of loneliness inside. So even when you say, well, you know, there's a gay culture that's built around that, there's a sense of identity and a sense of belonging hidden in what you're saying.